Hey, what's going on everybody? I'm at Pruitt and I am finally doing a video for my channel with my bit of an introduction into Davinci Resolve and basically, just sort of helping you get started with it. I've actually talked about Davinci Resolve on my podcast, Hands-On Photography. There'll be a link to it. I think it's up there or one of these sites. I don't know. You'll see it pop up on the screen and there'll be a link in the description of this video. But yeah, Davinci Resolve is a video editor that's free to use, but they also have a paid version. And don't be confused about the quality, because one's free versus one's paid. Both of them are really good. I have the paid version because I actually have Blackmagic cameras and it comes with a license. Great. But it's highly worth the $300 if you can just swing it and get the license, because there's just a few extra features that are inside of the paid version of the app that really makes it worth its while. And you get updates every year and there's no subscription fee. It's just one flat fee. So if you're looking to get out of the subscription world, you got some options right there with Davinci Resolve. Okay, so I'm just going to run through a quick little intro of it because people have asked me, hey, what are your thoughts on Davinci Resolve? And I'll go ahead and tell you, I dig it. I really dig it. No, I'm not ready to totally drop Premiere Pro and After Effects or anything like that. Not yet, but I'm really digging this. I've done a couple client jobs using Davinci Resolve only, and they came out quite nicely. So without further ado, let's go ahead and open up this app here. So let me switch my screen. All right, so as you can see on the splash screen, I am running version 17.4.6 at the time of recording this video. Also at the time of recording this video, Blackmagic has announced a beta build, version 18, and looks like it's going to be pretty cool. It's not available as a public release just yet, but it is available as a public beta. So if you're interested in trying that out, have at it. Or just stick with the current release right now for free to play around with on your machine. As we look at this app, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you have a couple different tabs. You have your media bin, cut, edit, fusion, which takes a second to load. You have color, and you have Fairlight, and you have deliver. All of these are tabs at the bottom of the interface here. The media tab, in general, this is where you dump all of your footage. You just say you want to import whatever files that you just shot, whatever, boom, this is your bin to put that in. I hardly ever use that because if I want to import footage, I can import it from the cut tab or the edit tab. Next up is the cut tab. Again, you see your media pool here on the upper left. Again, I'm not sure why there's some significance with that media tab when you can still import it right here. You can even import particular folders and things of that nature. It's as simple as doing a right click and saying import media, so on and so forth. Now, this is an old project from when I was working on something from Pruitt, the Cocoon and Joby B-roll and stuff like that. So you see these little red icons here. That's basically saying the files that are supposed to be listed right here are no longer found in the location that they're referencing. Doesn't matter, not getting in any of that. So anyway, moving on. So this is the cut page. All right, inside of the cut page, this is basically the area that's going to allow you to do a rough timeline. So not a lot of polishing, anything like that, but you can just do a rough timeline and do some transitions in between cuts and things of that nature. I'm not really digging the cut page. It just sort of seems a little wonky to me, but there are some people that love the cut page and get a lot of miles out of it. Darren Mostyn is one person. I'll put a link to his channel. He is an amazing color, so I've learned a lot just from watching his stuff. But yeah, some people dig the cut page. It's not really my thing. You can try it if you want. I personally prefer the next workspace, and that's the edit workspace down there on the edit tab. So I'm going to click that. And it's just another timeline. Basically, this looks more like your traditional timeline where you have your audio track and you have your video tracks up above, and you can add additional video tracks and things of that nature. There's one little quirk about the timeline that I don't care for, but I'll get into that in a second. But if you want to navigate through the timeline, you can just sort of hold down your control key and scroll with your scroll wheel left to right. You have the little bar at the bottom. You can drag that. If you want to zoom in on the timeline just to really make some really granular cuts or things like that, you can hit this little magnifying option right here for zooming. So just plus to zoom in, or minus like that. Or what I tend to do is just hold down the Alt key on my Windows machine. I believe it's Option on a Mac, and just scroll up or down with my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. I find that to be much quicker as a shortcut versus going to the menu option up here. So with that said, that is a particular keyboard shortcut that's similar to the likes of Premiere Pro. When you first launch Davinci Resolve, for the very first time, it asks you, is there a keyboard layout that you're used to working with? And it lets you bring that type of layout into it. And for the most part, it does it all. Just everything that you're sort of used to doing inside of your previous app. There's one shortcut that I made inside of Premiere Pro that I can't quite figure out how to make inside of Davinci Resolve. And that is the option to have my cursor jump to where, not my cursor, have my playhead jump to wherever my cursor is. Because right now my cursor is over here a little bit down the timeline. And I used to have a little shortcut on my keyboard, and I'd hit that shortcut and the playhead would just pop down there. Even if I had the cursor down here in the middle of the timeline or just slightly below the timeline, if I hit my hotkey on my keyboard, the playhead would automatically jump to where my cursor is. Can't do that here. The only way I can get that functionality now is to simply just click at the top of the timeline right there in the ruler bar, like so. And yeah, that's quick too, but I think my my keyboard is a little bit quicker, especially considering sometimes the mouse cursor is not always at the top. That's just saving me half a second of work. At the top, again, you have your media tab. You got your different files that you can import in. And as you click on the files and you look over here to the right of the screen, you'll see a couple of different tabs. You have this mixer tab, metadata, and inspector. If I click on the metadata, it pulls up what the actual file that I've selected, pulls up its metadata. Like this file here, this is a 5.7K file in RAW, shot in 59 frames per second, 60 frames per second. Click on the next one down here. This is another one, same thing, 5.7K RAW. This one's 5.7K RAW. And then there's this one at the very top. That's not 5.7K RAW, that's 8K. And it's at 30 frames a second, as shown here in the metadata. Then you also have this inspector tool, an inspector tab. Get used to that inside of Davinci Resolve. You'll spend a lot of time inside of the inspector tab. As I click on a file, let's click on this one here. This gives me all of the different parameters that I can, and properties that I could set for the file before even getting them into the timeline. So if I want to make them bigger or anything like that, I can do that just by doing the zoom and so forth. Right here, this is another icon that gives you a split view of your timeline. So now you have just one single program view on the timeline here. If I hit this, I now get a preview or source view and a program view over here on the right. So now if I double click on this piece of 8K footage, it should load up in here, but it's probably not, because I'm running so much stuff right now and it's freaking out the computer. So let's try not to do that. Yeah, let's just click on this 5K footage. All right, so now I have 5K footage, but I can see that this is at a different aspect ratio. So before I even put it on the timeline, I can just zoom it in over here in the inspector on the right. So just zoom it in and reposition it if I want, and just go ahead and work from this particular view like so. All right. And in addition to changing the views and things like that, you can set in and out points before you put them on the timeline. Like right now, this is, I guess that's roughly 12 seconds worth of footage. Yeah, 12 seconds worth of footage. Maybe I don't want all 12 seconds. Maybe I just want, 6 seconds or so. So I can set an endpoint right there on this piece of footage. And then let's see, just play ahead a little bit. We'll just stop it here. Yeah. And then just hit out. So now it's basically shortened that piece of footage down for me. Okay. So, and again, that's functionality that's found in pretty much any video editing software, just setting in and out points. All right, so now let's pull it down on the timeline. If I grab it from here, I'll get to pull the video and the audio for the file, even though this was recorded without any audio, just totally silent. But if I didn't want to just grab the audio, I can just hover over it like this here in the source view and just grab that particular icon right there. No, I don't want sticky keys. Grab that icon like that, and then that'll only drag down the video of the file. Very nice stuff. Some of the things built into this application, like right here, you have these little handles right there at the edge of the clip, and I can just sort of drag and place it however I want, like that. What that's doing is creating a fade, like a fade in for that particular clip. And instead of having to add an effect to make it have a simple crossfade transition or anything like that, I could literally just build it by moving the handles on the corresponding clips over each other. So now if I play this back, we should get a bit of a crossfade from one clip to the next, like so. So then you have these effect tabs over here in the upper left. You click on that. There's a gazillion effects over here, a gazillion of them. And some of them are pretty good. Some of them are a bit cheesy, but most of them are pretty good stuff. And these effects include titles, like for lower thirds, or just titles to pop up on your screen and things like that. You have audio transitions, and you have these other generators. You know, if I want to put color bars on the screen, I can for the moment, just in case something goes wrong. A lot of different things in here. Then you have these what's called fusion generators, and these are a little bit more robust effects. We'll get into fusion here in a second, but these are quite nice. And you have a lot of these open effects for filters, Gaussian blurs, lens blurs, so on and so forth. And you can sort of get a preview as you hover over them, like so, or you can just drag it, like right now, this blur. If you look at our program, let's just make that full screen there. So if we're looking at this now, this is fairly sharp, but if I hover over the blur, it blurs it out. And then if you notice, as my mouse moves across this little button, it's scrolling through the footage as the mouse moves. Pretty cool stuff. But if you want to just drag it onto the footage, you can just click and drag, boop, there, and you drop it down onto the footage. And remember, this inspector tab, again, you may want to just keep in mind and keep that tab open at all times, because you're going to use it a lot. Again, you can transform things right here on the clip. And if you have issues with the particular filter that you clicked on, then just click on the effects tab and it should show up down here, which it does. This is the Gaussian blur effect that we added. And I can say, oh, this thing is a little too strong, so I can just dial it back some, you know, however you see fit. Pretty good stuff, pretty simple user interface. All right, so now that's the beginner side of things. That's just dealing with the actual timeline. Okay, so now we'll move into Fusion just for a second, because Fusion is really, really advanced. Click on that. Fusion is basically a motion graphics option built inside of Davinci Resolve. Think of this as being like a Motion or a After Effects competitor, if you will. But it works on a node structure. You know, you have this node here and you have this node here. This is basically your input, and this is your output. Whoops, didn't mean to hit that key. And if you want to add different effects, you build this little node tree. I'm not going to get into that because I'm still trying to learn it, but it's okay. I've done a few things in it and it's okay. My brain still works in layers when it comes to motion graphics and things like that. So I'm having a bit of a challenge figuring that thing out. But you can check out Casey Faris's channel. He will be linked below. He has a lot of different tutorials on Fusion on his YouTube channel. So check that link below. Now, moving on. Color. This is my favorite part of Davinci Resolve. The color tab has so many different tools in here to not only color correct your footage, but also color grade your footage. And the beauty is not only just those extra capabilities, but it's fast. Now, if you're using the free version of Davinci Resolve, you are at a disadvantage for this particular piece, because a lot of effects built into different video editors are using GPU accelerated effects, including color. And for the free version of Davinci Resolve, it's going to rely on you to have a really strong processor. GPU acceleration is not supported in the free version. You have to upgrade to the studio version. So keep that in mind. That's a common thing that I've heard from people that say, you know what, I tried out Davinci Resolve, but it was slow. And I asked them, well, was it the free version? And they say, yeah. I said, that's why, because there's no hardware acceleration inside of the free version. So just keep that in mind. Again, that's another thing that just really makes that $300 worth it. But inside the color tab, you work in a node structure again, unlike in the other options of Premiere or Final Cut, where you work in layers with adjustment layers and things like that. And it works really well with raw footage, whether it be Blackmagic cameras or Red or Ari, Alexa, whatever. It works really well. It's pretty much an industry standard when it comes to color correction and color grading. Let me find another piece of footage here. Hold on. Let me go back to the media pool, turn that off. There was this one here. Yes, let me drag this down. Never mind the audio, don't really need it. Okay, so now I will put my timeline playhead there, click on the color tab, and it should give me this particular, there we go. All right, so this is not the same as those other two files. This was again shot with B-RAW, and it's a different resolution and so on and so forth. And I shot it in log format. I spoke about shooting in log on my show, Hands-On Photography. Link to that should pop up or somewhere in the description, so you can check that out. But log is basically a flat profile for your video. Now, when it comes to using this node structure inside of Davinci Resolve, it makes perfect sense, because this, again, it goes with the input and the output structure over here. So everything that you feed into this particular node, and you create a new node, like here, I just hit Alt S, that creates a serial node. So whatever I put in here is going to feed into this node. So let's say I want to work on this particular node and just try to give it decent balance. And right now, as I look over here at the scopes, everything looks fairly balanced from an RGB perspective. My blues are a little bit low, so I can add a little more blue here in the offset, and then that'll help balance it out just a little bit more. Okay. And again, these scopes are just magical inside of Davinci Resolve. You got several of them here. You can just pick on the different ones. You got RGB Parade, you got your waveform, you got your vector scope for checking out saturation and skin. The histogram, I hardly use the histogram. I definitely use waveform and vector scope. Actually, I use Parade more than the waveform. So it's usually Parade and vector scope for me are my top choices. But if you want to just sort of expand them all out, you can expand them all out into their own separate window and put them on a different monitor. Let's see, we can do a 4-box like that and just sort of change it to, let's see, histogram there, and we can put waveform there and stuff like that. And if you want to work that way, you can. But for me, most of the time, I'm just in a single view and keeping it sort of docked over here to the side, because that works for me for most things that I'm working on. And I wish my dog would start barking. Shut up. Okay, anyway, let's go back to Parade. So now I've made that balance out, and I can continue to work on actual, you know, correction and exposure and things like that. So let's say I want to give this a little bit more lift and contrast. So let's just give this a little more offset, so that gives the exposure a little bit higher. I want to hit contrast, and that really makes it pop some. And then I want to take the highlights down here and just pull that back. You know what? Let me take myself off the screen. That might help. There we go. So then you got all these options over here. You got color boost, saturation, so on and so forth. All right. And if I just take this highlights and pull them down, I can do that. Take the shadows, pull it down, just to really make this image pop some. Looks good. Now, all right, so I'm thinking, okay, I'm good to go, but maybe I want to bring out more, you know, from the dog or something like that. Just bring out more of the dog's colors. So I can create a brand new node, just go serial. But when I do that, I'm not necessarily sure I want to pass everything into this particular node. So what we do is create a, what's called a parallel node. So I'm going to undo that, and I'll do Control P like that. And that's going to give me the option to only focus on one particular thing inside of the particular scene. So I can go over here to these little selection tools like this and just pick that and hit Shift H so I can see what got caught like that, and play around with the actual selection. Let's see. So this shows me that I'm getting more of the dog, because that's what I want. More of the dog to be affected. You can just play around with these tools and really dial it in. Something like that should get me fairly close. I don't want to take up too much time. All right, so turn that off. That's Shift H. So now when I go to boost saturation, what should happen is I'm going to boost more saturation shown on the dog. So I'll go down to the saturation slider, raise it up, and it's giving me a little more on the dog. And if I do more contrast, it should show more on the dog, like so. You can see some of the dark showing up in his shoulders and things like that. This looks horrible, I know, but I'm trying to make it look overdone just for the sake of YouTube. All right, there. So we got that done. But that's the color tab, and you can do so much more in this thing. I'm just trying to go really quick, and I'm already taking up too much time. So let's finish this up. Fairlight. Fairlight is where you do your audio production. If I had audio in here, I can basically mess around with the EQ and the dynamics and panning and things of that nature over here on these tabs. It's really easy. If you're used to handling compression and EQ, you'll totally latch on to this stuff. It's really straightforward. Maybe I'll dial into the Fairlight tab at a later date. And then lastly, you have the Deliver tab. The Deliver tab is where you do your exporting. I can clear this list here. Don't need any of this stuff. This is client work. Y'all don't need to see all that. Okay, I can clear that list. But the Deliver tab is where you basically export all of your footage from the different composition that you put together. You notice I have here at the bottom, it looks like an in and out point, because that's all I want to be exported. Sometimes I have clips hanging out here to the right that's just like sort of willy-nilly that I may come back to, especially if I'm doing reels and things like that. But I only want to focus on this particular in-out point. And you got a lot of different options in here, whether you send it out as an MOV file, MP4, so forth, H.264, H.265, a lot of different settings. You can even, like this timeline is an HD timeline, but you can still export it at a higher resolution. Like if I want to export it to 4K, I can, and you're still going to get really good image quality on that. Pretty neat. If you want to send it straight to one of the social media channels, you just need to log in. You get those options there, YouTube, Vimeo, so on and so forth. And then there's also the option to send XML files, so you can open them up in different apps. Okay, I've done that quite a bit. Maybe I'll talk about that one day. But yeah, that's the Deliver tab. And after you got everything squared away, put the name of the file, hit add to render queue, and it pops over here in the render queue. And then you just hit render. And then while it's rendering, you have to walk away because you can't do anything else inside the app. That's something that I don't particularly care for, being a Premiere user. Inside of Premiere, I can take some, an in and out point that I'm ready to export and tell it to go run over in Adobe Media Encoder, AME. And while that's doing its thing, I can come back to my timeline and work on something else until that finishes out. So that's one thing that I don't like. If somebody knows a way that I can continue to do multitask stuff like that inside of Resolve, leave a comment below. Let me know, because I'm still learning this thing. All right, that's it for this video. I have run really long. 20 something minutes. Yeah, not used to y'all having videos this long on my channel. If you got any questions, give me a shout. Tag me on Twitter, @_Pruitt, or comment below with your questions. If I can answer it, I will. Just let me know, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hitting the like, share, and subscribe buttons, because YouTube algorithm loves all of that stuff. Really does help me out. And hopefully I can get back to doing these videos more and more and more. Until next time, y'all, create and dominate. Take care.